Check, check. Okay, good morning everyone. Are we ready to start? Yep. Okay. Kia ora koutou and welcome to the Environmental Services Committee meeting for the day. I'd like to welcome everybody and a special welcome to John Henry, our mana whenua representative. It's really great to see you here, John, although you have potentially picked the shortest meeting we have ever had for environmental services. But that's okay, I understand you're here for other things today too, so that's great to see you. Also like to welcome our community board members, Anna Lyon from Pleasant Point and Jan Finlayson from Geraldine. Welcome, ladies. So I'll just first call for apologies. Currently I have apologies from Councillor Piddington and Ali Talbot from the Temuka Community Board. Do we have any other apologies? No, would someone like to move those apologies? Thank you, Councillor Shannon. Seconded, Mayor Bowen. All in favour? Carried, thank you. Okay, we now have public forum and I'm just going to ask Nigel to introduce our guests for today from Inua. If you'd like to do that, Nigel, that'd be great, thank you.
Kia ora koutou. Thank you, Madam Chair. Look, it really is a pleasure today. Yesterday we welcomed our students from the Inua Exchange, which has been running for, sort of over 20 years, I think now, which is part of our sister city relationship with Japan. And we're very lucky enough and fortunate enough to have Masa Tiramai from the Chamber of Commerce and also the Inua New Zealand Association with us this morning. And Masa's going to come up and say a few words, and he's challenged himself in English, so he's put the challenge out to any of us that attend Inua Japan in the future to brush up on our Japanese. So it really is my pleasure to invite Masa up here. And we've got, over the next 3 weeks, we've got kids in the area, which are in the Japan students are at Craighead Girls High and Roncalli, and then later in the year our kids go over. So something that's I think we all hold dear as far as this relationship. It's been really successful over the years. So without further ado, please Masa, please come up, and Akemi is going to accompany him. Yeah, just up here, thanks. Oh, Akemi, could you just push that button? Yeah, thank you.
Good morning. I am very nervous. Nice to meet you. My name is Masaharu Tiramai. Please call me Masa. I am very happy to meet you. I work for the Inua Chamber of Commerce and Industry, and I also work for Inua New Zealand Association. I visit here this time as an attendant of 3 students. Inua City has a population of 70,000 and is located near New Chitose Airport. Blessed with nature and water. It is similar to Timor in population, nature, and people. I hope that the exchange between Timor City and Inua City will grow. I am very much looking forward to interacting with the people of Timor, which is a sister city of Inua City. I look forward to working with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Masa. Really appreciate that. Thank you very much. And Masa's going to join us for the rest of the meetings. Thank you. I'll pass back to you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, fantastic and well done. Thank you. Okay, so moving on to the next item agenda is items of urgent business. So do we have any items of urgent business? I haven't been made aware of any. No. Identifications of matters of a minor nature. I have Mr Cooper is going to give us an update on the Rakitata Revival Strategy Steering Group meeting that he attended last week under minor nature. Do we have any, and I will actually declare a conflict of interest in that report, but it's only a receive information, so we'll still be part of the meeting. Do we have any other matters of minor nature? If not, could I ask that somebody move that we discuss the Rakitata Revival Strategy at the end of the meeting? Thank you, Councillor Scott. Seconder. Thank you, Councillor Jackson. All in favour? Carried, thank you. Do we have any other declarations of conflict of interest? No. Okay, so moving on to the chairperson's report. I'm trying to think what I've done since the last meeting, and normally I've emailed myself what I've done and have not actually done that. So, yeah, just normal council meetings, obviously community board meetings. Mr Cooper's going to give us the update on the Rakitata Revival meeting, and I sat in and observed one last Thursday as well. And I think that is all since the last meeting. So if I move the adoption of that report. Thank you, Councillor Parker, seconded. All in favour? Against? Carried, thank you. Okay, so moving to item 7.1 is the confirmation of minutes from the Environmental Services Committee meeting held on the 13th of February 2024. And the recommendation, when I just get there, is that they be confirmed as a true and correct record of that meeting. Would someone like to move that? Thank you, Councillor Jackson. Seconded, Mayor Bowen. Any discussion or matters arising from the minutes? No. So I'll put the motion to the floor. All in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. So only report for this meeting is report 8.1, which is the actions register update. So the purpose of this report is just to give an update on actions that we've requested throughout the meetings, and we only have one item on there being a workshop on the vehicle fleet, and this kind of sits across two committees, being the Infrastructure and Environmental Services, and is a outcome from one of the reports that Mr Taylor presented at a previous meeting. We had asked to have a review of the fleet in regards to petrol, carbon, sorry, what am I trying to say? Petrol diesel versus hybrid versus electric. So we haven't actually had that workshop, but we did get a reply from Mr Taylor, which I'll just read out to you if I may, when I find it in my emails. Yeah. So his response was, there will be a focus on opportunities for a reduction of carbon emissions from fleet vehicles. The Climate Change Advisor, that's Mr Taylor, proposes to use smart track data with help when available from Deb Gherkin and the transport team to compare, I can email them. Sorry, to compare our use of similar sized petrol-only vehicles and hybrid vehicles within the fleet to estimate fuel saving impact. Also to review average distances travelled per staff work trip to see what proportion might in future be tackled conveniently by small battery electric vehicles. A second area of investigation is availability and cost of recharging facilities for our battery-powered vehicles at or near the offices, including Alpine power supply capacity. On a related topic, the second staff travel to work survey at Council has just been completed. Last year, the estimated carbon emissions from staff travel to work exceeded those of the pool vehicle use, so future attempts to reduce emissions in this area would be valuable. And so he wasn't sure if that satisfied the request or whether we still wanted a workshop or if we had any other questions. So are there any other questions on that? Is there a view on whether this still needs to be an action, or what do we want to do there?
Through you, Madam Chair. Look, I think the last time we reviewed this was pre this council, wasn't it? Might have been pre the council before. It feels like it's a while ago. Mr Dixon, you might be able to speak to this, but it feels like it was 4 years ago. So I think it would be of value for an update for the current elected member group, just to understand what has been considered in the past, and maybe status quo is fine. And I know, I know there's a lot of hybrids sitting within the fleet as an example, but it would be good for the elected members to understand the practicalities of where some of our vehicles go, etc., and the use for TDC business. So I think it still has some value.
So as a workshop, or do you think that could be covered off as just a report back to this committee?
Probably happy to be guided by the
Mr.
staff.
Mr Trainer, do you have a view on that?
I think it would be valuable to do a report to the committees, and that way we've got something in writing, and this is recommendations coming from that.
Is everyone happy with that plan of attack? Okay, so if we could change the action to be a report back to the committee on the vehicle fleet, that would be good. So does somebody want to, sorry, I'll just go back to my meeting notes. So the recommendation is that the Environmental Services Committee receives and notes the updates to the actions register, and I will just add to that, and that we request that a report is brought back to the committee on the vehicle fleet. Would someone like to move that?
Happy to move, but can I suggest an amendment that we put an agreed time?
Oh yeah, that would be a good idea. When do you think that might be a good timeline for that, Mr Trainer or Mr Dixon? At the next meeting. Cool, thank you. So Mayor Bowen has moved that. Yeah, seconder. Looking around, Councillor Burt. I'll put the motion to the floor. All in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. So now we move on to, there's no consideration of urgent business, so we'll move on to the consideration of minor nature matters, and I'll just ask Mr Cooper if he could just give us an update on the steering group committee meeting he attended last week. Thank you, Mr Cooper.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you. ECAN councillors received an update last Thursday, and some people around the table were invited to attend on behalf of TDC as key stakeholders. And that was an interesting discussion in and of itself. And then on Friday, I attended the steering group meeting to have an update on the draft consultation for the strategy for the revival, Rakitata Revival Programme. There were some key themes that have come through the consultation process, and one of the strongest was that there's a perception in the community, particularly in the farming community who might be affected, that they've been left outside of the tent, as it were, or they don't feel as though they've been treated as a key stakeholder, as land users as they see themselves. So that came through as a strong theme. There was a sports, fishing and access to the riverbed theme that came through the consultation. There was, what also came through was that there isn't a great deal of light shed on the regulatory environment in terms of the strategy itself. So there were questions around how that strategy might tackle the regulatory environment for land use and other matters. The South Branch caused a bit of concern, particularly with land users, landowners. That came through as a theme. And there was also an appetite for stronger recognition of existing community groups that are doing really good work. And I think that's a reference to the Upper Rangitata Landcare Group. They've been doing some great work for a number of years. And there was also water quality and allocation came through as a theme. My observations of the two meetings would be that there appears to be two camps forming. One around economic needs and drivers and land use, and the other environmental and cultural. And it seems to be that both parties need to work to reassure the other group, as it were, of the value and the safety, as it were, lack of because there are some perceived threats in here, particularly to the farming community. So it would be, how do we get them in the tent? How do we give them reassurance that that's not the intent of this? And it is a long-term project, not something that's going to happen in the short term. It's something to aspire to and work towards over many, many years. So I think it'll ultimately come down to whether or not those people feel that they are in the tent, as to whether or not this council and possibly Ashburton Council feel comfortable enough to ratify it. And ECAM, we're hoping to have this to us following some more consultation to come back for a decision on whether or not we support the strategy sort of July, August. So that's where it's at the minute. Next steps are more engagement. There's talk of targeting particular influencers and particular groups within the farming community. I think that would be helpful. And there's also going to be another round of online engagement as well. So we'll see how that shapes up and how it develops over the coming months. But that's probably an update from me in a nutshell, unless there's any questions, which I'll be happy to answer.
Right, well, thank you, Mr. Cooper. Are there any questions for Mr. Cooper? No?
Like a comment, if you may, and I think the challenge with this, and you know, from a district council point of view, we need to be not just seen, but I think we, you know, generally want to be, you know, investing in the, you know, the health of the waterway. I think the problem that I see is that we're playing economic versus cultural, environmental, you know, outcomes against each other, but they don't necessarily have to be mutually exclusive. So those conversations, you know, need to be had together. It was interesting, I think Councillor McKenzie from ECAN raised the point, I don't know if he raised the asset value, but, you know, you've got $800 million worth of assets sitting in the South Branch as an example, and TDC, Timaru District economy and the Ashburton economy, you know, are fuelled, or large parts of our economy are fuelled by that river. So it's such an important, it is the lifeblood of the region. You know, that's the reality of it. So we do need to somehow strike some balance on you know, on what is right. And I just think, yeah, I'd like to see more time on getting the strategy right for all parties, rather than, and I know it's taken some time, but get all voices heard so we can get an agreed direction. And ultimately, I think that'll be a better outcome, rather than rushing to something whereby councils aren't endorsing something because the voice isn't heard. I think maybe that's something that TDC should just suggest, and I'd be interesting to hear other views, but, you know, what is the rush to get this done versus doing it right, would be my comments. Thanks.
Thank you, Mayor Bowen. Anyone else have any comments or questions? If not, I might ask somebody to move that we adopt the verbal update. Thank you, Mayor Bowen, from Mr. Cooper. And a seconder, thank you, Councillor Scott. I'll put the motion to the floor. All in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you very much. And I'm assuming there's no discussion required after our public forum, and so I will therefore close the meeting in a record 20 minutes at 10:20. Thank you.
Tēnā koutou, good morning and welcome to Infrastructure Committee. Warm welcome to Mr John Henry and warm welcome to our Community Board members, Anna Lyon from Pleasant Point and Jan Flinson from Geraldine. Thank you. Welcome. Okay. So we'll go through, we've got no public forum. Identifications of urgent business. I have not been, oh, apologies, sorry. Apologies from Ali Talbot and Stu Paddington. So I'll move them if I've got a seconder. Thank you, Councillor Scott. That's good. Okay, so we'll go through, I haven't been made aware of any urgent business. Anything brought to the floor? Matters of a minor nature? No. Any declarations of conflicts of interest with this agenda? Chairperson's report. Since our last standing committees, I've attended council meetings, I've attended Aorangi Sports Stadium discussion, council workshop and an infrastructure meeting with our group manager, Andrew Dixon. I'll move my report if I've got a seconder. Thank you, Mayor Bowen. All those in favour? Oh, yes?
I do have a conflict of interest. This matter reports 8.3 in relation to the Peel Forest closing. I'll sit back away from that.
Thank you, Councillor Burt. So we'll just note that Councillor Burt will be removed from 8.3. Thank you. Okay, we're going to do the confirmation of minutes and then we're going to move straight on to 8.3. So if we move to 7.1, confirmations of the minutes from Tuesday the 13th of February. True and correct record. Can I have a mover, please? Thank you, Councillor Pye. Seconder, Mayor Bowen. All those in favour? Carried. Thank you. So if we move to 8.3, report on page 30, the Peel Forest closed landfill. I will welcome Lee Griffiths, who is the General Manager Field Operations from ECAN. She's on Teams, I believe. And we have John Henry here as well. Lovely. Oh, I can see some face. Is Lee there? Welcome, Lee. Can you hear me? I can't hear you. Can you try again, Lee? See if I can hear you. Try now, Lee. they're just phoning IT. Maybe. Okay, all right, so we'll move to 8.1 while we wait for our technical problems to be resolved. 8.1 on page 13, so this is our action register update. So we'll go through these one by one. So we've got update on the Peel Forest landfill, so that's on paper 8.3, so we'll be having a discussion on that shortly. Seal extension policy review is included on this agenda on paper 8.4. So we'll be discussing that then. A detailed analysis on traffic management. So that is still a work in progress, I understand.
Yeah, that'll be presented at the April meeting, the report on that.
The City Town Steering Group. So there's still some discussion going on with this steering group, and what I understand is that there's going to be a conversation with Mayor Bowen and Mr Traynor middle of the week with Rosie and yourself, Mr Dixon. So
And Councillor Jackson.
and Councillor
Jackson.
Jackson as well, just to find out, excuse me, where we're going moving forward, correct? Any further comments or questions on that? Pariora Dam. So the new regulations have been checked and does not apply to the Pariora Dam, so this action now can be closed off. Any comments with any of these actions, please? Okay, so we will go to the recommendation of that we receive and note the action register. Have a mover for that, please. Thank you, Councillor Scott. A seconder. Thank you, Mayor Bowen. All those in favour? Aye, carried. How are we looking, IT team? Okay, we'll continue on to 8.2. So we're looking at the infrastructure key project updates for the third quarter. So we'll go through these one by one. So the first one is the Road Renewal and Improvement Program. I do just have a question regarding, so contract 2494 appears to be rather a large contract. And the impacts on the on-hold transport choices funding cut, just how the logistics of that big contract, how that works with that, within that. Is Susie, Susie, welcome, because I see it is a large contract, it's been given a lot of jobs to do. So what's the impact regarding that one that's on hold?
Yes, so it is. It's our road maintenance operations and renewals contract, which was tendered 3 years ago now, 5-year contract plus 2 years, sorry. The Transport Choices program being put on, hold slash, the projects have been designed and may be delivered in the future when more funding becomes available from Kotahi, but it won't have an impact on the contract itself. So it's no contractual harm to TTC.
Any further questions regarding this update? Okay. Let's move on to the Pleasant Point water main renewals. Any comments regarding this update? Okay. Yes, Councillor Shannon.
Thank you. Just one question. Where under the project risks there, the main project risks relate to quality parameters being met. The reinstatement of the various surfaces throughout the sites is particularly challenging. What is done here when they reinstate surfaces? Is it returned to what it was, same sort of surface as it was before, or are all surfaces reinstated with asphalt? What's the challenge there? Can you better explain that, please?
Welcome, Andrew.
It comes down to the ground conditions, as I understand it, going through to just make sure what we're putting in back in to reinstate, say, footpath, roading, is actually going to last to go through. So it's those challenges, and until you open it up, you're not 100% sure what's there. So that's where, as it's progressing, it's just finding what's under the ground when we go through. Yep.
Okay, South Street Bridge.
It's all finished.
Is completed. The Red Roof landfill cell and capping works. The Geraldine sewer siphon duplication. Parallel pipeline. Yes.
I just kind of note that we've spent 90% of our budget. We're kind of 100% design done, 95% construction. But then when I read the commentary, it appeared like there was still quite a bit of work to do. Are we anticipating that budget or better still under budget on that project? And what are the risks around not meeting budget?
Just to introduce it firstly, that it's a multiple year project. This one's been dragging on quite a while. So, yeah, we are nearing completion. But the budget-wise, I think, yeah, it's fairly accurate, but Andrew might be able to...
Yeah, the budget, as it comes out of that renewal to go through, as opposed to a standalone capital item in the budget, so it's out of the bigger renewal pools for that area to go through. The other one where we're going through, as Andrew just mentioned, it's the multi-year through. Because of the current weather conditions, we're having to slow right down because we need the Pariora intake back into supply with the water shortage direction through. So we're, slowing down for the next 2 months.
So I guess really my question was, the budget there says it's 22.7 million, we've spent 20.3, so that kind of leaves circa 2 million. Is that enough to complete the job?
It will be, because the most challenging parts, going through the gorge and that, has been completed. We're on the relining bit through at the moment. Yeah.
Oh, yes, Mayor Bowen.
Oh, look, thanks. Just a comment. These are great, and it's awesome to see the high quality that's come back to council now, because it's just around transparency of those capital projects, and I'm just hopeful that we can make sure these are also loaded up to the website where it's easily found, because people are interested in these. This is the lifeblood of what we do. This is what our LTP is all about for the next 10 years. So I'd just like to make the comment, these reports are great, and and thanks for, obviously there's a lot of work gone into them. We haven't had a lot of questions around them, but it's not reflective of the quality, so I appreciate that.
Thank you. Okay, so the recommendation is that we receive and note the infrastructure key projects. Can I have a move for that? Thank you, Councillor Shannon. A seconder. Thank you, Councillor Pye. All those in favour? Carried. Because otherwise we're going to exclude, aren't we? We'll do 8.4. We'll move on to 8.4. Okay, welcome, Susie. So, seal extension policy. I'll take the report as read. Would you like to speak to this report, please?
Yes, presenting an updated seal extension policy. Not a huge amount of change in, as you'll see by the change table, in regards to kind of the background and what we're doing, just reflecting the fact that there is currently no budget allocated in the long-term plan. And also we've removed a clause number 7, which is now included in the prioritisation guidelines, which is where there has been significant change following feedback from previous long-term plan and annual plan submissions about bringing in a more considered approach to our selection criteria. So you'll see there it looks at the if it's a high or critical lifeline priority, so that's not just roading lifelines, that includes services, telecommunications, power, etc. If it's got a high level of heavy vehicle usage, number of dwellings per kilometre, and the financial contribution that's available from adjacent properties or interested parties, and also if it has significant regional value. There is also, if you have a look at the model, which is an attachment 2, it breaks down the multi-criteria assessment. So it looks at historic maintenance costs, average roughness as measured by a road roughness meter, crashes, type of crashes. So there's a table there that is followed. So basically it incorporates the things that the community, that we've heard the community asking for. And I think that's probably about all I've got to say about it.
Thanks, Susie. So just to remind the councillors, we have about approximately 700 roads in our district. Previously, we had a budget of 330k a year to do seal extensions, which is approximately 2 kilometres of roading, but that has been pulled for this long-term plan at this stage. And we expect to receive submissions via the long-term plan on this decision. So I have a question on number 3. Schools aren't included on page 163, I think it is. Number of traffic movements or dwellings. So schools not need to be part of that assessment?
No, there's, as far as I'm aware, there is no operating schools on the unsealed road network. There is school bus routes, however, noting that these change over time. The school bus that could have been running up one area for a whole lot of kids in 5 years' time no longer has kids in that property. So, it's around, the longer term view, which is you're really looking at the cost, the crash history, the dwelling numbers that are on there. Yeah.
Any questions from councillors regarding this policy? Yes, Councillor Jackson.
I was just curious, Susie, private investment. So what sort of appetite has there been in the past for private investment into some of those unsealed roads? Has there been much historically?
So prior to me starting, so I've been here nearly 8 years, prior to me starting at Timaru District Council, there was one seal extension up at Te Moana Gorge Road that did have private contribution to it, but so far everything else has been requested to be fully funded by the Infrastructure Committee.
Yeah, there has been another one, which was Orari Station Road. Sections of that were also had private contributions towards. Generally, we asked for 50% at the old seal extension policy, but this is said basically reduced that down to 1 point for every 1%. So different way of doing it, but.
Councillor Pai.
Thank you. I just had a couple of questions. On your matrix on the table 1, the criteria assessment on page 166, with the crashes, you don't seem to account for the number of crashes. So you could have a road that had 30 minor injury crashes and it still only scores 2 versus 1 fatality, which is 5. And I just wondered, is there a way you can build in there to account for the number of crashes rather than just the type?
Yes, certainly there would be, and that's why we've kept kind of that model separate to the policy so that we can, it follows the intent of the multi-criteria selection, but there is the ability to look at the specifics around crashes, because we did have a look at the number of crashes, then we ran some scenarios through the model and it didn't actually change much, and then so we went to the death and serious injury versus no crash, but yes, certainly something that could be looked at when there was funding available and a request to do.
Just one other question or comment is on page 167, and right down the bottom it says that roads that have significant physical or economic barriers to undertaking seal extensions cannot be assigned a higher priority value. So are we comfortable just going, if it's too expensive or too hard, we're just not going to give it a high priority? Because I'm not sure I'm comfortable with that.
No, that's a fair point. It was more targeted that it might be a very expensive crossing and involve, bridge upgrades, those kind of things. So it's more looking at how it fits into the wider network and what's feasible. I suppose it's more around feasibility of delivery, but that could come out, yes.
I think I'd be more comfortable knowing it's a high priority and it still rates as a high priority, but there are challenges in delivering the work, rather than just going, we're not going to assess it as high priority.
Fair comment. We are happy to remove that statement.
Any other questions? Yes, Councillor Shannon.
Thank you. I have a couple of questions. Just one of them was with regards to number of dwellings per kilometre. Is it also considered the dwelling proximity to the road? For example, a number of rural houses are not right beside the road, and I know that you might be considering when you're living beside the road, obviously the dust and what have you, but the proximity, sometimes that means that's not an issue. Is that considered?
No, we haven't got that considered, because generally per kilometre, the houses that wouldn't be as close to the road, there'd be less houses per kilometre. So you'll, generally speaking, the subdivisions that have occurred in the rural area have been small blocks along the road frontage. So you tend to get those pockets of housing, as opposed to on the longer rural roads where there might be the old farm homestead. They'll be further back off the unsealed road.
Okay, thanks. So the other one was following up on Councillor Pye's comments about crash data. Is cause of crashes considered here as well? Because just pure data on number of crashes or even injuries isn't necessarily relevant if the cause hasn't been determined as being an unsealed road, for example.
It's a tough one with the cause, because we don't have all of the information. We do have the information that comes out of Waka Kotahi's crash analysis system. Generally speaking, there's multiple other contributing factors and road is not generally defined as the cause of the crash. So there'd usually be other causative factors. But I suppose if it's inappropriate speed on an unsealed road, that will cause a crash, but it won't be defined as the road itself. So it's actually quite hard to drill down into that level of information. There is, still a lot of impaired driving that can be, more causative of these types of crashes.
So that data is available at that level. Following police reports, of course, would show that, wouldn't they? So it wouldn't necessarily make sense to use all that data.
Yeah, it would be quite hard to attribute it solely to the road. I don't think we've got any in recent history, at least, that have been causative of the road conditions itself. So, yeah, probably wouldn't tell the story that we wanted it to tell, which is why we went with number of serious crashes, the seriousness of the crash, but taking into account Councillor Pye comment around number of crashes could also add value to the story. So we'll figure out how we could incorporate that.
Yeah, generally speaking, roads should be very forgiving. That's the philosophy that's used. So people do make mistakes, whether that's through impairment or just through lack of attention. But the road should be able to accommodate a lot of those mistakes. So the crashes do have a road factor in them, but it's not necessarily the only factor.
Just a quick question, Susie. How frequently are we getting notification of crashes on some of those shingle roads? Do we get all of them? Because we see a lot that someone's gone through a fence, but I'm sure we're not getting those reports. Just wondering how frequently do we get a report of an accident on a shingle road?
So some community members are reporting observation of crashes through our CRM system. I'll acknowledge that we do need a better system to be able to capture all of that information. But this information that we're working off for the first iteration of the multi-criteria analysis review does base on the crash analysis system, which is Waka Kotahi's tool, which relies on it the crash being reported to New Zealand Police, because it's the only way at this stage that we can get the fair data that is from a network-wide view as opposed to any particular road or street.
Just one other quick question. How there doesn't seem to be sort of any weight behind how some of the shingle roads only have a one-way in, one-way out system where there's no actual side roads to take. And that, do you think that could be something possibly that could be considered in the future?
Yeah, that could probably be in the second phase, looking at that, not quite Lifeline's link, but that it is the only way in and out. So not technically a lifeline by definition, but to that community or that member that lives there, it is the only way out. So yeah, that could certainly be incorporated into the second stage of the assessment. So not in the, the weighted multi-criteria analysis table, but in the high, medium and low priority, it certainly could be something.
Thank you, Councillor Oliver. Any further questions?
I've just got one. Heavy vehicle usage. What period's that over? Doesn't actually say anywhere.
So they're based on averages, so average vehicles per day.
Per day.
Yeah.
On that point, sorry, if I may, Madam Chair. When you're counting that, obviously that's going to be huge. If you're just taking a month and you're going winter versus, a busy period, or you're doing it when forestry trucks are running or not, or, silage contractors are running. So how do you account for that when you're working out heavy vehicle usage? Because that would make a huge difference.
It does, and we do have a much wider program we need to cover for the traffic count. So obviously, to make sure we're designing and looking after our sealed roads as well as we can, we have to make sure we've got timely traffic counts on those. But also we don't neglect the unsealed roads. They do get traffic counts. For example, we had a request from a community to get a traffic count when they knew that the road was going to be busy. So we can get the busy count as well. But also then you'll have the average that happens the rest of the year. So we do respond when we can, but noting that it's, we have got 1,800 kilometres of road that we need to count and make sure that we're doing the work that we need to do to confirm our traffic count across the network, which helps obtain the wider funding from the Transport Agency. So we have to be mindful of that.
Okay, thank you. So the recommendation is that we receive the updated seal extension policy and adopt the proposed seal extension policy with that amendment to be made. Susie from Councillor Pye's comments. I'm happy to move the recommendation if I have a seconder. Thank you, Councillor Pye. All those in favour? Aye. Carried. Okay, can we go back to 3.8 now? Very good. So, report 3.8. So, welcome John Henry and Lee Griffiths. Lee, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Welcome, thank you. I'll take the report as read and give Mr. John Henry and yourself, Lee, an opportunity to speak to the report if you wish to.
I wasn't going to say much. From our point of view, we'd like to have that work completed ASAP, and that's as much as I'll say on the matter. I have read the report. There's all sorts of conflicting bits and pieces in that report around earthquake possibilities, all sorts of things like that. There could be a media effect as to that tip going into the river itself, causing an environmental impact on that river and the environment. But yeah, I'll just leave it at that. Thanks.
Thank you. Lee, I welcome any comment to the report.
Thank you. I'll just comment that environmental budgeted in our strategy to maintain the. So while
you're breaking up, sorry, Lee.
Can you hear me better now?
Yeah.
Sorry. I'll just comment that isn't budgeted in because they're outside the district. So considering your long funding options to deal with the permanent solution the level. We just encourage that are the short ones as well. Environment category budgeted current to River and River.
I'm so sorry, but you're breaking up. We're only getting part of your sentence.
That's okay.
Beg your pardon? Do you want to try to turn your video off and see if that just helps with the transmission?
Is that better?
Yeah, let's start again.
Thank you. The piece I just mentioned to that.
Oh no, sorry, it's not any better. Okay. I think maybe we just need to have this discussion.
Can I just probably
Yeah.
say something too? So basically, yeah, there is an option of deferring this job. It's certainly not the recommended one. It really comes down to a basis of risk. So as you can see in number 15, or option 2, there's that risk table there, which indicates that in 2 years, yeah, there is a bit of risk there. And as you continue to delay, the risk gets higher. That's just basically because of the frequency of flood events and any other natural events that may occur puts the landfill at risk. Or I just want to point out with the costs as well, option 1, the $12 million there, half of that is actually our own waste charges for disposing of the refuse into the Red Roof landfill. And there's about another $2 million of that is waste levy. We're hoping to get off that one. We will be making an application, and certainly indications are that we will be exempt from waste levy. So that will reduce that cost a bit there. The option 2 is doing it in a stage approach is a higher cost because you have to, when we excavate part of it, you need to recap it, reseal it, and there's a lot of work involved in there. I think the other negative effect there is to the residents and the fact that they will have an ongoing excavations for quite a number of years under that option. Yeah, it won't be very pleasant. And also the damage to our roads as well over that longer period. So we believe, as officers, we recommend that, yeah, we get in there, do it once and finish the job. I think there, and basically it's about protecting the Rangitata River at the end of the day. Yeah, that is the risk. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dixon. I'll open the floor for questions. Mayor Bowen.
No questions. Just a quick comment. My only concern is around the dollar value being in the public realm, and I'm not sure if this is actually ideal practice because we've sent a budget out there to the market when we haven't gone to the market yet. But look, I am pretty comfortable with this, and I'm happy to move the 2. But I'd like to just add 2 other recommendations. 3 being that the work go to tender be brought back to the infrastructure committee for final sign-off, so we actually understand the numbers from the market that are involved. And then 4, I don't know if we have looked properly at other opportunities for funding. You might be able to answer that, but if we haven't, then that other funding opportunities be sought. That may have been what Lee was possibly referring to, but whether it's MFE or ECAN funding, I'm not sure what's out there, but I'm sure someone will know. Yeah.
There is a potential source of funding, which is the Hazardous Sites Fund, a government fund, which is managed by ECAN. So we're pursuing that one at the moment. So there definitely may be an opportunity to get some extra funding.
Yeah.
Just a comment too with the tender. Yes, we will certainly be tendering it. Normally that would go to Tenders Procurement Committee rather than back to Infrastructure Committee. Either way, but.
So I was just going to ask anyway, I'm quite keen to see a better understanding of those costs, because when I looked at the estimated tonnes this morning based on the disposal charges and the waste levy, I got different figures to the 2 million you just spoke of. So I think we need to be kind of a little bit clearer about what the costs are and then what's coming back to council and what the net cost is. And I thought we had a decision on those waste levies, but maybe I imagined that. And so, yeah, for that reason, I feel like we need a better understanding of what the cost is brought back to this committee. But
Yeah, happy to do that.
I would agree, and I think we need to break up the costs into the different components. The excavation of the old site, the transport, the internal charges separated, and also potential earlier capping it wherever it goes.
Laura, I'm supportive of doing this work in one hit. I think we can use loan funding to spread the costs. We don't need to just spread the costs and increase the cost for this council. I do have some reservations, though, about transferring a problem from a river environment to a coastal environment. And are we going to be sitting here in 30 years' time wanting to shift it again?
A comment I make there is the Red Roof landfill is a managed landfill. It's all got the cells are well lined, leachate collection systems, everything else. It is a Class 1 landfill. The other alternative is Cape Valley, which is a lot further transport costs. So yeah, this is municipal waste. Yeah. Okay.
I know this is not possible, but I did wonder if we cannot just dig another hole in a similar location and reduce our costs down to pretty much nothing, because the environmental risk when it's already buried under the ground is not actually changing, because you're just putting the same stuff back under the ground but removing the risk of it coming into the river. But I understand that in our regulatory environment that is never going to happen, but it would be quite a cheaper alternative.
It would be nice to do, yes.
Yes, Councillor Oliver.
Oh, look, just thinking of the people of Peel Forest and the disruption this is going to cause, I think I agree with Mayor Bowen and Councillor Pai, and the comments Mr Dixon made around just getting in and getting this job done. There will be roads that will need fixing. We don't want to be fixing them twice. There'll be establishment of plant and stuff that has to be carted in there. That there's no point doing that 3 times. So yeah, I agree that I'm happy to move or second option 1.
We've got a mover and a second, and we'll go through the recommendations. I'll just select the side. Yes, Councillor Scott.
Got a couple of questions, please. Just Andrew, you picked up on that fund with ECAN. I think it's Contaminated Land Fund, and I would suggest that an application needs to be made, not thought about. So I'd like to suggest that we actually are doing that to ECAN. There's 50% funding there, so let's not think about it, let's execute that. 50% funding, that'd be handy. So I'd like to suggest that is actually actioned. I also just have a question to ECAN, if Lee can still hear me, around in their note it said that no further budget for in-river work was going to be carried out. Is that this financial year or never? Or ever? That's a question I have to her, and then I just have another couple of questions.
Never budgeted for it.
Never.
Interesting. Okay.
Do you have another question?
No, I just think that's short-sighted. But anyway, I'm not going to have that battle today. Yeah, I agree. When I read both reports, they're quite conflicting, so it was quite hard to have a view. You've got ECAN here basically saying that 1,200 QMEX will not cause an issue. It's only happened 17 times over the last 40 years. So, as a lay person sitting here and making such a significant decision, you would argue that, are we panicking? However, agreed that it needs to be dealt with. Don't panic next to me. Absolutely acknowledge that it needs to be dealt with. I just wonder, a little bit of fear-mongering is going on in such a short space in time since I've been sitting at this table. But yeah, just one of my things is I'd appreciate that ECAN application is actually actioned.
Thank you, Councillor Scott. Councillor Booth?
Yeah, look, I understand there's a similar situation down in Southland at the moment with a landfill on a coastal site, and it's being held up due to the possibility of having explosives in it. Is there any possibility that we've got explosives in there? And do we know that? Because once we start digging it up, it might blow up. So I guess I'll just mention that. But actually, I was quite keen on the idea of Councillor Pye's, why don't we just dig another hole? It's not, all we're doing is transferring the problem from up there down to potentially a coastal issue.
In response to what's in the waste, it's an unknown. There could be anything in there. It was a municipal landfill, sort of started around the early 1960s and was closed at the early 2000s. So, yeah, we're hoping that everything will go well, that there's nothing, no explosives or anything, or drums of unknown substances.
Through you, Madam Chair, are we, it sounds like the council are in mind to approve it to do in one hit. Are we coming back with where the funding is coming from before we press go?
So,
Or are we pressing go even without that?
no, so I think we've got recommendation 1 and 2, the commitment to carry it out and the approach, and then we're going to add a 3 in regarding that the tender process will come back to infrastructure.
Yes.
Than procurement.
No. So my comment, I think the opportunity is your tender committee will receive a normal tender process, but what you might then have is the full consideration where funding's coming from, etc., which would come back to infrastructure committee. So that would outline what we're expecting to go over the landfill, the cost of that, waste levy, those sorts of things. So it's public and transparent. Once we have a confirmed tender through tenders, that would be my thinking. Yeah.
And we need to make sure it's outlined what funding opportunities we have applied for
and that was,
and received.
Yeah, perfect. And 4 was seeking the other funding opportunities, as Councillor Scott has very well reinforced the point. Yeah. No, it's good.
Okay, so, and you know, I believe it's the responsible action as elected members that we get on and do this also. So we've got the recommendations. Are you happy with them? So we've got a mover, which was Mayor Bowen, a seconder, which was Councillor Oliver. Are you happy with those recommendations? All those in favour? Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. Thank you, Lee. Thank you. You may leave now. Okay, we're going to move into, so there was no nature. So we're going to move into the public excluded report. So I'm happy to move us into public excluded. Seconder, thank you, Councillor Oliver. All those in favour? Aye, carried.
Right, good morning, team. Welcome to Community Services Committee meeting today, Tuesday, 12th of March, opening the meeting at 11:15. I'll call for apologies. We have Ellie Talbot and we have Councillor Stu Piddington. I will move those. Thank you, Councillor Pye. Second, all those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. No public forum today. Identification of items of urgent business. None. Identification of matters of minor nature. None. Any declarations of conflicts of interest to be registered? None. Okay, Chair's report. Just wanted to acknowledge meeting with Jess around welcoming committees catch up. And obviously there's a report in there on that. Obviously met with Beth with my portfolio this month. Numerous council meetings. I attended the Downlands Water Supply Committee meeting, Audit and Risk Committee meeting, Aorangi Stadium Committee meetings. I had the privilege of attending the TDC procurement process at the Chamber of Commerce along with me and Nigel, CEO Nigel, and just wanted to acknowledge Nicole and Nigel for their presentation to the room. It was excellent and it was well received, so well done that on that particular meeting. Citizenship ceremony, warm welcome from Jan, or actually haven't acknowledged poor Jan and Anna, sorry, sitting in the corner, sorry. I just wanted to acknowledge the warm welcome from Jan and Councillor Oliver out at the Geraldine Community Board meeting last week. It was an excellent meeting. Local Arts Scheme Subcommittee meeting last week. I had the privilege of attending with me and Nigel meeting Little Olive at Sea Bay last Friday, who was the winner of our Sea Bay desk design. So it was awesome meeting Little Olive, who's 7. I think she just had a birthday. Yeah, oh, she just turned 9. And her family, so it was lovely to meet her, and she was very excited to see her drawing up on the desk. So thank you, Beth and the team, for organising that. It was lovely to meet them. Also, just wanted to acknowledge we had our orientation day yesterday for the hearing panel for the district plan. Special thanks to Linda Birkin in particular. It was excellently organised. The panel were very welcomed here to Timaru. It's a long journey for some of us, but yesterday was a success. Just also wanted to acknowledge Ben from our parking officer. He was our driver for the day, and he had some awesome stories about infringements on parking. So just wanted to acknowledge Ben too. He was a hard case, and we really enjoyed having him take us around the district, so thank you. I would just like to move my chair's report. Can I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Councillor Burt. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Thank you. Okay, confirmation of minutes held on the 13th of February. I will confirm them as a true and correct record. And seconded by me and Nigel. Thank you. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Okay, so we'll move to reports and actions register. I think we just had the one on there, didn't we? Which is our ongoing Agintyre Art Gallery. So that is now complete, so just acknowledging that. So we will receive and note the action register. Can I have a move for that? Thank you, Councillor Pye, seconded by me and Nigel. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Okay, I'll hand over to Beth. Report 8.2, Community Services Group Up.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. This is just the standard update report that we are providing to the Community Services Committee every time we meet. There are no really significant updates other than we have provided additional information for the district pools opening season, and to inform you that we will provide a summary of all of that data once the summer season is completed as well. So I'll take the report as read and happy to field any questions that may come from elected members.
Councillor Pye.
I spoke with you about this yesterday, Beth, but when you come back with the final report for the pools, could we have a report based on the number of days that the pool is open or the number of hours, because obviously if the Pleasant Point pool, for example, is only open half the number of days of the Geraldine pool, that's going to affect the daily rate of attendance.
More than happy to include that in the final report. I can also provide a verbal update as of today, or sorry, the 1st of March. The district pools at the time of writing have been open for a total of 119 days. I can confirm that the Temuka pool was closed for 1 day with 2 early closures, Pleasant Point for 4 days with 4 early closures, and Geraldine for 1 day with 4 partial. And just for point of reference, Pleasant Point in particular closed on the 6th of February last year. And Temuka was reduced to 4 days a week significantly over the last season as well. But I'll make sure that all of those statistics are included in the final report next month.
Thanks, Beth. I've had some really good feedback on those new digital signs, or the digital sign on Stafford Street. So that is excellent, and they look great. Just curious about whether or not we could have more of those in the... Thank you, Stephen. You know, places like the Piazza, for example, would be a pretty good location, I would think. Maybe at the Landing Services building.
Kia ora. The outdoor ones are quite expensive to do. It's the weatherproofing and stuff like that and making them reflective. There's the thought that we could actually get some reasonably cheap ones and put them in council facilities. We could expand the network then and do it reasonably cheaply. But I mean, it's just a matter of funding if we wanted to put them elsewhere. Probably the biggest challenge is getting power to the site, because it has to be on 24 hours. It can't run off the street light circuit because the screen has to be on when the street lights are off. So. Doesn't really work that way, but it's something we could look into. But I'd like to look at options to get them into council facilities, because it's the kind of philosophy behind it is that we can't expect people to come to us to get information, so it's getting information to places they go, like CBay and the library and stuff like that.
A great way to keep people connected, I think. I think what the running costs are, what, about $500 a year, is that right?
Yeah, I mean, the remote management software is about $500 a year, and then it's a monthly 4G plan because it runs completely off the network, so not massively, and there's a bit of electricity in there as well. So, I mean, say a single press ad's about $900, so I mean, it doesn't take long to kind of pay for itself that way.
Yeah, they seem to be pretty good bang for buck.
Just the Agintai Art Gallery, you mentioned in your report that heritage experts have been contracted.
We haven't got to that stage yet, Councillor Booth. Let's just close out the update report. Any further questions? Okay. Oh, yes.
Sorry, apologise. Through you, Madam Chair. Thank you for the team that represented TDC at the Multicultural Aoraki Festival. Some staff members putting aside their Saturday it was, sorry, so long ago, Saturday, both across climate but also the facility. So really cool to see those representative and just a great reminder to the community of the cool stuff that we do, and I know there's some cool recommendations that came out of that too. So thank you for their participation in that.
Thank you, Mayor Nigel. Yes, absolutely. It was. I heard through, all the community that attended it. It was well supported, and it was a great day. So, yeah, well done to all the people that organised that amazing festival in our community. Okay, if we have no further questions, we will receive and note the Community Services Group update report. I have a move, Mayor Nigel, and seconded by Councillor Shannon. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Okay, moving to report 8.3, Agintai House Gallery Seismic Repairs Report. And welcome Nicole and Matt to the table.
Thank you, and through you, Madam Chair, councillors and members of the community boards. And we tabled the latest update, which will be every 6 weeks through these standing committees. And bearing in mind that this information does cover the February, but we will give you an update of the last couple of weeks of things that have been happening on site. So what I will do is actually hand over to Matt, because he's handling everything on the ground, and we'll be able to answer any questions or bring you up to date now, or I can take further questions.
Thank you. Yes, so we have, as per the report, we've finally got the roof off the house and have done some, cleaned it up. There was 119 years of birds and nests up there. We carried out a quick assessment of the roof and did find live borer up there, which we didn't find downstairs. We found dead borer downstairs. Initial meetings with the structural engineer came up with a repair strategy that was kind of inefficient. So we were thinking along the line of removing the roof to dispose of the risk of the borer. That's kind of when this report was written. An update on that is that we've now done further investigation, basically cutting some members apart and drilling holes and having pest specialists there and so forth. So we are working on a plan, which I don't know what it is yet, but we're going to attempt to try and save as much of the heritage feature as we can. Hopefully in the next report I'll have a more definitive answer of what that is. We just met with the architect yesterday on site. But overall, that wasn't unexpected. We knew there may potentially be this problem up on the roof, so it's not out of the blue, and we did have process to deal with this. So apart from that, the building is now completely stripped as far as it's going to go, and not finding really much more. So yeah, quite positive.
Yeah, so what level of activity with the borer? Is it like right throughout the whole lot, or is it just in parts, or is it a minor?
Oh, I've learnt a lot about borer in the past week. It likes warm, hates cold. So what we found downstairs in the veranda was the last 300 mil of the roof rafters closest to the gutter was where it was. Apart from go further up, there was nothing. We found the same upstairs, but it's a bit warmer upstairs, so they've travelled further up the rafters. There are some rafters that it's all the way to the top, but it's concentrated down the bottom. In cutting open some of the timbers yesterday, we found and I'm speaking to Heritage New Zealand, years ago they made a mistake on the east coast of the South Island, and they built with sap rimu, which is soft wood, not the heartwood. So the borer loves that. So when we cut some open yesterday, you could see in a rafter where the heartwood was, not a single piece of borer, but round the outside, a little 20 mil strip round the outside was borer. So when you look at that without cutting it, it looks like it's full of borer. That's what we're trying to determine, is what is the structural strength of it and what can be saved and stuff. The pest control are very, very confident they can treat the borer that's there. It was used, a similar process was used at the Nelson School of Music, which is a heritage building as well, and our architect worked on that building. So once I got everyone's opinions on where we were at, we're now starting to formulate a plan, but initially it was no surprises. This is what it could potentially be, so yeah.
I guess I assumed that during some of the evaluation of the building that someone would have climbed into the roof and actually had a lock.
Yeah,
and at that stage potentially bombed you would normally treat the borer, wouldn't you?
It would need a man smaller than you and I to get where this borer is. It is right out at the edge of the roof. We knew there was borer there, but in a dark, dusty roof cavity with, as I say, 119 years of dust and bird nests, it's hard to see if it's active or not. Now we've pulled it apart. we're accessing areas that you would never have got to anyway, and that's where we're seeing the majority of the live active borer.
Just to add to that, it was anticipated that there would have been some type of bore or some effect. So I presume there was a PC sum or rather than from contingency for that foresight. So it was anticipated. Further questions?
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. My only question is how this, does this hold up the overall process? Because that was always our concern around overruns with this project. So does it keep it on track? Or?
So if we were to replace the roof, there's an 8-week lead time on the members that need to be made for it. As I say, next report I will be able to report definitively and give you definitive answers on where we're at. What you see now is the worst case scenario, right? We're working to come back from that. It is still borderline within the contingency of the project time-wise, but yeah, so we're trying to pull that back.
So just follow up, so how, within the contract, are we protected with the overall contractor if there's an over 8-week overrun? How do we manage that? Yeah, so...
Yes, so contractually we have arrangements for payments, or at times if we find and discover something like this that's out of their control and our control, there are mechanisms within the contract to handle that, yes.
I would question that Farrell Construction will be putting in an extension of time claim.
Yes, they will. But
which is what me and Nigel was getting to.
Yeah.
Yes,
So
there will be.
Yes, but there are mechanisms to handle that within, because it's an unknown. We knew that it was something work. So what we're doing now is working on, if we don't remove all of the wood and we're able to treat it, then we bring that timeline back and we're within the timelines that we've agreed contractually. It's only if we don't expediently work through and it moves outside of that timeline, then there is an extension of time that would come.
It'll be good to receive that report at the next standing committee with all of that detail to extension of time claims or whatever that extension may equate to.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes.
I was just after clarification. So when you talk about rafters, are you talking about the structures around the trusses, or is this something that is exposed?
So it's within the roof cavity. These old buildings don't have trusses, so to speak, as we know. It's got rafters and a ridge beam. Right. So it's the rafters and some of the ridge beams that have the bore in it, the active bore in it. And there are sections that, because we're doing some modifications to the house anyway, we're going to be taking some of these out by course. We're now just working out what else we need to take out with it.
So you're not compromising or even thinking about compromising, because you talked about the heritage, trying to maintain the heritage. The structural changes wouldn't be seen anyway, would they?
They're not going to be seen, but there's some beautiful large beams up on the roof that we'd like to keep anyway. And yeah, just to keep it as heritage as possible, yeah.
Okay, I just had one further question, and my sincere apologies, Nicole, that I haven't raised this earlier. I just noted that the project budget was sitting at 3.7, but when I reviewed tender and procurement, we approved 2.5 something, and I just wondered how that fits with project budget versus approval.
I apologise, I will have to go back. The number that we were given at the time that Nigel was in the seat, GM, was the 3.7. So I will go back to finance and just double check where that 200,000 difference is. It may, and then I will update that or bring that to the next committee.
Sorry to raise that, I just, transparency.
Yeah, it has always been my awareness that 3.7 was the amount, but I will come back to you and confirm.
Yeah, just tender and procurement, I'm not quite sure that's what was approved at that level.
I think they're two different things. I think the 3.7 was the overall budget, the tender.
That including like fit out and...
that was the total.
Yeah.
So it's the whole
Whereas
project.
the contract is only a proportion of that.
The contract was 1.7 million?
Yes. yes.
And then there was all the professional fees, contingencies,
And other
et cetera,
items
et
on top,
cetera.
yeah.
Just, it would be good to get just some visibility on what actually is in our, what we're working towards.
Yes, yes, we can do that.
Thank you. Right, any further questions? Councillor Oliver.
Madam Chair, was there not a component that there was going to be some fundraising for this, or did that just, there was no component of that? Just asking that question.
No, so my recollection was when the projects were joint and there was talk of the new art gallery, then I believe there was conversation around fundraising, but not just for the house itself. That's my recollection. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much, Matt and Nicole. So we will receive a note, oh, not that one. We will receive and note the progress report. I will move that, seconded by Councillor Oliver. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Consideration of urgent business items. Oh, there's none of those, so I can close the meeting at 12:40. 11:40? Oh, sorry, might need new glasses, thank you.
Chairman's report, exactly the same. We've had a number of council meetings, a number of workshops, obviously concentrating mainly on the LTP. I chaired a menacing dog hearing, and I've been on the audit and risk meeting since the last one. I'll move those. Can I get a seconder for those, please? Councillor Parker. I'll move those. All those in favour? Against? So carried. Thank you. Moving on to item 7, confirmation of minutes of the last meeting on the 13th of February 2024. I'd like to move those as read. So I wasn't at the meeting. You'd like to move those? Thank you. Councillor Scott, and a seconder, please. Councillor Oliver. All those in favour? Against? So carried. Thank you. Moving on to reports, and we'll move to the action register update. And I'll get, if you'd like to, any comments in relation to those? No, good. So scoping of for project delivery team, in terms of that one, it's due to resourcing constraints. They've been unable to complete that first one. Second one, waste minimisation. This will be undertaken in our long-term plan. This has been completed. So it's that one. Is there any questions or any discussion in relation to those action points?
Through you, Mr. Chair, and this might be a question for the Chief Executive, just the approach to the project delivery team, is that, because it was a request from Council, but is your thinking to still go down this track or just sort of review in general, just so we're all on the same page, I guess?
I think it's, when you look at the structure of the council, the officers, you've got 3 main areas where they do projects, and that's infrastructure, obviously, and roading and water are the 2 big components there, and they have project managers within their teams. And also building under Nicole, and she's got project managers under her team, and they're progressing really well. What I think is we need better reporting, which is slightly different focus for me, and that is making sure we get reports designed that are consistent and that actually are giving council confidence that projects are happening to time and within budgets, and we also have no surprise culture, and that if there are issues that they're coming to council. So I think that's the role we need, and I think Andrea, myself and Nicole and Andrew, we need to discuss what does that look like.
Yes, because I think it's more, Nigel, around actually the preparation leading into a project. I think we have great project managers within in-house managing projects. It's those projects to get us to the start line, for example, the stadium. You could even, even that property review, a project manager could quite easily pick that up and do that. So I think it was not around actual delivery of projects, it's actually the preparation to take the pressure off BAU and actually getting us to the start line of projects that are brought to the table. So that's always been my question over the past year is that project management leading into projects. I don't think the question is around the inability of project management within council. It's excellent. It's taking the pressure off to get us to the start line.
And are you going right back to business case?
In business cases, all of that.
Yeah, no, no, that's right. Yeah, so my question, just in regard to this being on the actions register, is it still open? Do we need further update? What's your thinking on this? It's obviously a key one that we've discussed in, a lot.
And I'm happy to be part of a conversation with CEO, on that vision. I think as a council, we're all on the same page as councillors, so happy to be involved in that shaping of it as the new CE.
Okay, we'll bring a paper back to the committee in 6 weeks' time.
So we'll note that in terms of that action, it's still open, and we're looking for a paper back at the next meeting. Thank you. Councillor Pye.
I'll just have a question on waste, of course.
Absolutely.
I did get assurance during one of the LTP workshops, but just after this morning's conversation, I do want to double check. If the Peel Forest landfill remediation takes longer than what we think, and we don't get that income into the next budget for FY25, are the fees that we have set enough? Because it appears to me that in the current year, that is the problem. We didn't get in the Peel Forest stuff that we thought we were going to. And I just want to make sure we don't have the same problem again next year.
Thank you, Mr. Dixon.
Yeah, through you, Chair. So Peel Forest landfill, the revenue was included in this year's budget, and it's likely to be deferred, given that we still need to go through a bit of work with external funding and also resource consent. So the next year's budget doesn't include, that income as such. So we've based it on a business as usual model, and we are confident that it will cover the cost. So any extra revenue coming in from fuel price will be literally extra. We're not relying on it. No.
That is good to hear, thank you.
Good discussion, thank you. Any further questions? So with that amendment in there, I'd like someone to move that we note and receive that paper for the actions register. Councillor Shannon and thank you, Mr. Mayor Bowen. All those in favour? Against, so carried. Moving to item 8.2, financial report for the summary of financial results for the 31st of January 2024. And Andrea, if you'd like to give us a update.
So we've talked about the forecast for the remainder of the year during multiple long-term plans. There will be another reforecast in the next quarter, which we'll bring to the council meeting following that, which will have an update of where we're heading. So just another thing to note, yesterday we borrowed $15 million to cover the capital expenditure that's going on at the moment.
Questions?
So the additional 15 million takes your debt to revenue ratio to 1.74. We are working hard on the expense side to try and pull that back. So we are looking hard at all expenditure, and we've had a lot of success through getting ideas from staff. And I think Megan's not here. The first week we saved, I think it was about 100,000. Then the next week we saved another 100,000. So that's going to help our forecast. You'll note a lot of the forecast is around timing of funds coming in from other parties, particularly subsidies and grants from government. So that's a big player in this. And that's the main issues. Obviously, on the expense side, we're trying hard to bring the other expenses back in, and also financing costs are over. So those two things combined are creating that issue. I did say we would bring the financial reports to each standing committee, but what we found was there's not a direct correlation between all of these, whatever we call them. What do we call these things? Sorry?
The group of activities.
The groups of activities and the committees. So if we're going to do that, we're going to have to redo these reports and group them together. And some areas cross two different group managers, so we're going to have to work that through. That is the main issue there. On the corporate activities, I also wonder if there's stuff in there that possibly belong in those group activities as well. So we'll be talking that through as well.
Thank you. Mayor Bowen.
Look, just to that last point, I'm comfortable that they still just report back through to commercial and strategy. In an ideal world, but there's some challenges with the accounting system. I think as long as, we've got oversight, that's the key thing, as opposed to where they go. Yeah.
Could we not have them at both though? Because in the past we've had them at both commercial and strategy and council, and then it looks like we don't have questions at council meetings. And so I've never understood why we have them at both committee level and council level.
I guess the plan is essentially that council get the quarterly type reporting, which is essentially, so March, for example, wouldn't necessarily go to commercial and strategy because it would go to council. And then as part of that quarterly report, there's extended reporting around capital and other key performance measures that have happened within that quarter as well. And then essentially a new reforecast. And then the interim months would then go to the committees. So by breaking it down further, will give more detailed information as opposed to the high-level group of activities. So it's just working out, the information's there, but it's just working out how we're going to present it. So on a monthly basis, the individual managers review each of their individual reports and then feedback to finance for variance reporting. So it's a matter of what can we do with those particular manager reports to be able to present them to the individual committees. But happy to provide a higher level one for commercial and strategy like we currently do, but then a little bit more detail perhaps for the individual committees.
I think through you, Mr Chair, if we do take them to the standing committees, it might be the consolidated goes to council and the standing committee chairs may have something to say about their particular financials.
Sorry, I'm okay with them not being in individual committees. It's more a double up of seeing them in this committee and then seeing them at council as well.
Well, then possibly we just take them to council.
No.
Timing of,
Absolutely.
the timing of, I guess, the timing of when the committee meetings are. So I think if we did a full council for quarterly and then committee for interim.
Yeah, okay.
Depending on timing.
So in terms of this meeting, this particular forum underpins every aspect of the organisation. So that's why it's always last, it's staged last, because there's so many things that potentially will to be raised in this and moved for a motion. There are issues with timing around the finances and when they go, and yes, there is a lot of discussion in here, but now that we're live streamed, that discussion is definitely out there, and sometimes it does seem like outside of this in a council meeting that we're ratifying stuff that people would think there would be discussion on, and we are significantly analysing at the moment because it's LTP. Outside of that period, sometimes there's very little or no discussion. Yes, indeed.
So I just have a couple of questions as normal. In the forecast at number 3, the operating surplus or deficit, as it may be, of close to 13 million, and this was raised at Audit and Risk the other day. So my understanding is what happened last year is towards the end of the year we added all the assets for the year and then calculated depreciation, and that created quite a difference. So my question is, does that forecast include what you anticipate will be depreciation on additional assets this year? And if not, will you at some point give us an idea of where you think we will land?
So the forecast includes some of that, because we've forecasted $34 million on the whole of council page, but there is more work being done around the assets and the depreciation. Yeah, so it's part of the next forecast that will fall out of that.
And even if you can't include the figure, it's quite good to have a note of what the capital value of those assets may be and what the effect on the end of year result might be, so that it doesn't nearly double at the last minute.
Yep.
Carry on. On that table at number 6, I wasn't convinced that it says that the table outlines the available funds once unguaranteed revenue has been deducted, and I wasn't convinced about that because it's actually just our forecasted revenue. And I actually preferred the table that you used to put in there where you could clearly see if we took these items out, this would be the limits, and if we left them, and I just wondered if there's a reason for the change.
So it was almost a little bit redundant because we had already taken those out of the 115 million. So, but we can put it back in and outline the difference between what we'd originally budgeted versus what we're forecasting.
I just felt the old table had kind of more options, because I know there's the theatre one, which you've obviously taken out of this to get to the 115, but there must be other one-off grants that we get throughout the year that we may not get the following year that's included in that 115, and I felt like the previous table explain that better, or if, for example, if we suddenly lost our 50% Waka Kotahi funding, this is what our headroom's going to be. Chances of that are slim, I would think, but yeah.
I guess for this financial year, we've taken into consideration what we should receive to get to the 115. So unless there's something that changes in the next 3 to 4 months, then it shouldn't change too much. But we can revisit the table. Yeah.
For you, Mr Chair, if you look at the actuals, if we received all our subsidies and grants, and typically they relate to capital generally, and if our interest expense was on budget, we would be breaking even. So they're the two that are really affecting us the most. Sure, personnel costs are over, and there are some one-offs in there, but the others in the revenue are offset by the increased revenue. So we're actually travelling relatively okay. I think that 115 will change, depending on some decisions that will be coming to council.
I did have another question about the number 7, where you've outlined budget reallocations, which is fantastic because it's something we've been asking for. But I did wonder if we have everything in here, and I just wondered if we think about our expectations and what we consider a budget reallocation, because on page 22 it talks about some better off funding that was reallocated that's not on this table. And is that not a budget reallocation, or am I misunderstanding something?
What I suspect has happened is they've talked about cost reallocations as opposed to revenue reallocations. This is the list that Finance have had so far, but now that we're getting to the sort of towards the end of the financial year, I suspect they will be looking at their budgets and thinking, oh my goodness, we're getting close. What do we need to do? So it's typically the last quarter where we may find a lot more reallocations are required.
Sorry. How hard is it to put the forecast column in the breakdown? Because I found that forecasted column in the overall picture really useful, but when you come down to have a look at the various activity groups, but is that really difficult?
And so the original forecast that we have in here was done at quite a high level through various meetings that we've had. Yeah.
That's good. No, very valuable. Thanks, Councillor Pye. Any other discussion? Councillor Booth.
I guess I'm obviously concerned about the forecasting, and obviously we've now got compared to our full year budget and the forecast, there's now a variance of almost $19 million, which is almost 10% of our budget, which is not really good. I mean, I think that our forecasts, I mean, obviously they've obviously sharpened up, and we have been unfortunately been over-optimistic in our income and underestimating our expenses, and that seems to have been a pattern. And I am concerned that should not continue, and I hope that is not reflected, obviously, in our long-term plan.
Is that your question, Councillor Booth?
Well,
that this not be reflected?
Okay.
I'm probably just making it.
I'm saying that I'm concerned that we'd be $19 million out.
You raise a very good point, but at the end of the day, I suppose when we want to re-educate ourselves around standing orders, and we've let ourselves go quite considerably. If you've got a question,
can management reassure me that those numbers that we are considering now are actually going to be real?
Thank you.
I agree with your concern, because I think that we sometimes are a little overzealous on our revenue, and there's one particular line, subsidies and grants. Those subsidies and grants are available, but we're just got to make sure we're on track at getting the work done to claim them. And they do relate to capital. On the expense side, there will potentially be some movement. So, such as we're up for a negotiation with our union members, so that may or may not create some variance there. Depreciation should be fine. Our finance costs, we now know what interest rates we've got. They should be based on the higher amounts, and it's quite clear there they were based on too lower interest rate. And we are working hard to pull those other expenses back, and interestingly enough, that is the one that is going to be under budget. So we are pulling that back. So as we have worked as hard to get a budget for next year that is real, however, there potentially could be some movement during the year. And I would anticipate it won't be to that level that we're seeing here.
Just a further question to the money we borrowed. What was the rate?
Just a moment, I wrote that down just for you. So we've got 7.5 million floating till the 15th of May 2028, and that's based on the 90-day bank bill rate plus 74 basis points. And the other 7.5 million we've fixed until the 20th of April 2029 at a rate of 5.236.
So 6.25 for the first amount?
Yep, so it changes every quarter. Yep.
That's fine. Okay, if I could go to page, let's see, page 22. Page 22. I'm just really looking at all the red ink, and I've sort of note, like people in digital, we seem to keep on allowing big numbers that seem to get away on us. Why is that so difficult to forecast what they actually require? I think that's probably the first question. There's a $2 million unfavourable here, variance as a result of the last restructure. That number just keeps on growing. December 20 was 1.7. Why is that? Also, again, down in other expenses, you've got IT services computer cost budget, 327,000 unfavourable. That, again, seems to be out of control and just continuing. We know it's happening, but can we not, what can we do to stop it?
So if we look at the personnel costs, we're, in this particular page, we're over $1 million. That $2 million vacancy factor is a one-line adjuster in those personnel costs. So for whatever reason, the budget's been done, budget's been done, and then they've said we can save $2 million through vacancy factors. Okay? What this is telling us is we've managed to save half that amount of the vacancy factors, because if that was $1 million, it would count for all. Sure, there are ups and downs throughout, and that gets down to potentially paying people at different rates or actually employing more people than we anticipated, or timing issues. But that vacancy factor is a problem. So effectively what it's saying is, if you had your full complement of staff, if we had the full complement of staff in this area, we'd be 2 million over because of that vacancy factor. And that was the conversation we had with the LTP about what do we do about that? Do we start pulling it back so it's real? Now, if you've got a high turnover, that vacancy factor probably would be achieved. But if you've got a lower turnover, you're going to blow your budget if you have full complement of staff. So what that tells me is you've got two choices. You either have to look at the amount of staff and carry vacancies to achieve that 2 million, or you run over budget. So that's a real issue.
Okay. Just getting back to IT, I also noticed in capital expense there 505 million, or 505,000 over budget there. It seems to be, if you add all those numbers up, that's quite significant.
Yeah, it is. And obviously, when you look at the previous plans, it's up and down like this for IT. You know, 1 year we'll plan, I don't know, 1.2 million, next year 800,000 and 1.2 million. That's got to be wrong. That's what that's telling me. And you look at some of this, like the Palo Alto network, that's about cybersecurity. The firewalls are all about security. So obviously we've got that wrong. So we're going to have to actually look at that planning a lot closer.
Yep.
We're also going to be reviewing our delegations to try and prevent this. At the moment, the delegations are such that various different managers can just approve these things. So we're going to pull them up.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. If we go to page 27. Recreation and leisure. Just interested to see the Sea Bay seems to be highlighting here, 188,000 down on income, but also over here in personnel costs, it's gone up 249,000 unfavourable Sea Bay and pools, and that is increasing. I think it was in December 31st, it was 87, and now it's 249. It was in 31st of December, that number was 87 unfavourable, and now it's 249,000 unfavourable. What's happening with Sea Bay?
So Sea Bay, with the personnel, it was under budgeted to start with, but then over the holiday period, the budget is split equally by 12, but over the summer period, their expenditure is greater. So that should then, the variance should slowly drop back over the rest of the year. Is that?
Yeah, okay. Well, it just seems to have popped up and highlighted.
Yeah,
in
and
red,
it will because this is January, so there's a lot of extra lifeguards and things like that.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Thank you, and I apologise, Councillor Booth, for putting you on the spot there around questioning, but it's probably something that we just need to be a bit more alive to, and once you get into the hang of asking questions, it's fantastic. And they are important, so I'm not taking that away from you at all. It's just in terms of that budgeting, it's a very good point. I mean, that's something that we should be alive to because it happens every year that we're loaded through the summer as opposed to annualising it and keeping it smooth, potentially, recognising that big lump through the middle there, and so that it actually evens out, makes it look better. Yeah.
Yes, we need to phase.
Phase it, thank you. Mayor Bowen.
Thanks. Sorry, two questions. First one is in other expenses around parks, ground maintenance and parks building maintenance. One's favourable, one's unfavourable, but parks building maintenance, what does that refer to exactly in regard to 344 unfavourable? Oh, sorry, my apologies, on page 28, so it sits in other expenses. So the question is, what does the 344 relate to?
Yeah, through you, the Chair. Building maintenance relates to basically infrastructure, vertical infrastructure. Most of it is playgrounds. We do have a couple of sports club rooms within the domains and some grandstands as well, but generally a lot of it is playgrounds. So I don't know the detail, I'm sorry. I won't be able to
No, that's
answer
all right. So it lends to my second question, which was, and I will keep this to a question, probably one for the CE, but can we, and you touched on delegations, but make sure that accountability for budgets is in KPIs for individuals? That was a question.
Sure will be. But the interesting thing about their parks is you take those three together, they're actually neutral. So there's obviously some offsetting going on.
Thank you. Any further discussion in relation to that paper? Okay, so we'd receive and move that, and Mayor Bowen's moving that. Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Scott, all those in favour? Aye. Against, so carried. Moving along, I have no consideration of urgent or minor nature in terms of matters. No public forum continuation, and so I'd like to move exclusion of the public. Councillor Jackson and Mayor Bowen. All those in favour? So moved. So